This is 7th grade lesson 5.1. Students will develop an intuitive understanding of proportional polygons. Once again, our standard is 7G1. Our hardcover book pages are 194 through 199, and the practice journal is page 107 through 110. Yesterday in our activity, we started working with similar figures, okay, and identifying that in order for us to have similar figures, they have to be proportional to each other, and that's a key thing. So figures that have the same shape but are not necessarily the same size are called similar figures. So notice here we have two triangles. Yes, they're both triangles. They're both also the same type of triangle. And these would be considered similar because they are the same shape, but one is shrunk down. Now, in order for them to truly be similar figures, they do have to be proportional to each other, like what we worked with yesterday in our activity, okay? So we're going to discuss a little bit about corresponding sides and corresponding angles. So corresponding sides are sides that are the same on the first figure versus the second figure. So you'll notice here that we have these two red sides are corresponding to each other. They're the same side on each of those two figures. So side AB corresponds to side DE and is similar to. That little funky shape that I have there between my ABDE is just meaning similar to, or it corresponds to, okay? So then we also have the blue side on each of these. So I've got BC corresponds to EF. And honestly, when you do these, you should put them in the same order. Okay, notice how I didn't say CB. Although if I was truly just identifying the sides, it would be okay if I said CB, but it's just easier if you put them in the same order. Okay, my last set of corresponding sides would be, well, AC corresponds to or is similar to DF. Okay, so that's working corresponding sides. We also have corresponding angles. So corresponding angles, once again, same thing, only this time you're talking about the angles that are in the same position on each figure. Okay, as you start working through these concepts, you'll be able to identify the angle measures in both of the triangles because their angle measures will be the same. So here, A corresponds to D. They're in the exact same position. That also means that they have the same angle measure. So if I were to say that angle A was maybe 60 degrees, then that means D is also 60 degrees. Okay, sometimes they're going to use a degree measure symbol like that little arc there. And if they give different arcs, the ones that have the same markings mean that they are the same in measure. Okay, if they don't give you a degree measure. Okay, other ones that are the same, well, B corresponds to or is the same as E. Notice how they have the same marking here? That's another way of seeing that. Okay, maybe they would tell us that on this one, this bigger one, that this angle E is, say, 90 degrees. Well, then that also means that angle B is 90 degrees. Okay, similar figures have the exact same angle measures. Okay, our last angle set or corresponding angles would be C corresponds to F. Okay, and once again, if I knew one of those, if I knew that F was 30 degrees, then that means that C is also 30 degrees. Okay, if they correspond to each other and they are similar figures, then their degree measures will be the same. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and practice identifying corresponding angles and sides once again, and then I'm going to have you guys do one on your own. So the trapezoids are similar, so they're telling us they're similar, which means all angle measures are equivalent or equal to each other, and all sides are proportional to each other. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with our angles. Angle A, now sometimes they will take these figures and they'll turn them. So you have to pay attention that it's not always going to be the left letter angle is the same as the left letter angle on the bigger figure, but that they are the same. Notice how these are the exact same. They haven't taken and turned one of them. Okay, so these are the same. So angle A corresponds to P, angle P. Okay, so let's do the next one. Doesn't matter the order that I choose. I'm going to go ahead and work around clockwise. So B, angle B, corresponds to angle Q. All right, so then we have angle angle C corresponds to R. And lastly, we would have angle D corresponds to angle S. Okay, so there's all of our corresponding angles. And you guys will be practicing this on the next one. You have to make sure that when you look at it, that if they've turned that figure, that you're identifying the angles, or maybe turning that figure in your head to make sure that you're getting the same angles. Here, all they've done was enlarged it and slid it over. Okay, so now corresponding sides. Whoops. Okay, so sides that are similar. So we've got AB corresponds to PQ. Okay, BC corresponds to QR. CD corresponds to RS. And lastly, we've got AD, or DA, however you choose to do it, corresponds to PS. Okay, so those are our corresponding sides. So identifying those sides. And that's very important because eventually what they're going to do is they're going to start giving us numbers out here, and you have to understand which side goes with which so that you can check proportions to make sure that they're proportional. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and slide one out here. I want you guys to try. So you can pause your video after I get this out, and you can go through and identify the corresponding sides and the corresponding angles. So you're going to do your angles and your sides, do them in any order that you wish. So go ahead and pause your video right now. So you're going to have 4 sides and 4 angles that correspond. Pause your video now and then start it back up when you're finished. Okay, so there's all of your corresponding angles and corresponding sides. So once again, it's very important that you're able to identify those, because as we start moving forward, you're going to have to understand how to compare either angle measures or side measurements to decide if you have similar figures. In order for them to be similar, those would have to be equivalent to each other, or proportional if you're talking side lengths. Okay, if I were to go through and say that angle M was, 50 degrees. Okay, understanding corresponding angles, then I could also identify that letter Z was also 50 degrees. Okay, if I said that angle K was 120 degrees. Okay, what angle on WXYZ is also 120 degrees? Well, that would be X. Okay, so that's working corresponding angles. If they give you one of the angle measurements on the other figure, you're able to identify that other angle measurement. Okay, the other thing that we're working with is just being able to identify. So in the previous examples, they were telling us that they were similar and asking us to find those corresponding sides and those corresponding angles. So we're going to discuss one more time corresponding. When you have shapes that are similar to each other, their angle measures will be equal to each other or equivalent, and their side lengths will be proportional. So when I'm looking at these pictures that I have here of these triangles. I want to discuss really quick these measurements on the markings, on the angle measures. If I have 3, that means that A and D are equal to each other. So if I knew that A was 70 degrees, then that means D is also 70 degrees. Those markings are telling us that those are equal to each other or the same measure. So that's one way. They don't always do it that way. Sometimes they give us the degree measures. But here, just identifying and understanding that those markings mean that those are similar, or not similar, that those are equal in measure. So once again, the 2 things that we're going to be checking in this part of the activity is to see if the figures are similar, they have to have corresponding side lengths, have to be proportional. So we're going to check our proportions or our cross products. And then also their angle measures have to be equal to each other. Okay, so let's go ahead. I always like to start with the angle measures myself, because usually that's the easiest to check. So I'm going to leave that up there so that we're able to see that. Okay, so here's our first one. It says which rectangles are similar to rectangle A. So we know we're going to use A, and we want to check to see which ones are similar. So in order for them to be similar, they must have corresponding angles that are the same measure. So let's check that one first. Well, all of them have right angles, so that those perfect little right angle corners. So that's not going to help us decide that. Okay, because all of the angles are right angles. So we're going to have to use corresponding side lengths. So this is where we're going to go through and we're going to check our proportions. Okay, making sure that when we set up our proportions or our ratios, that we match sides. So if I set up A, I personally would write it out as 3/6. Now somebody else might do 6/3, and that's okay. But making sure that when I go to do my second proportion, my second ratio, that I put them matching sides on matching levels. So wherever I put 3, I need to put my 2 for this one. So 2/6. So now if I check cross products, I can tell right away it's not, because this is 1/2 and this is 1/3. But if I check cross products, that's 12. This is 18. So these are not proportional. They look proportional, but they're not. Or similar, sorry. But they are not proportional, so therefore they're not similar. So we'll just double check C. So we're going to still use our angle A information, which was 3/6 or 6/3, whatever you prefer. Wherever I had the 3, I have to put the 2/4. So now if I check, that is 12. That is 12. Those are proportional. We already said the angle measures are equal. So our answer to this would be A is similar to C. Okay, those are similar because they are proportional. Okay, so we're checking, are the angle measures equal to each other? Are the sides proportional? Okay, so let's go ahead and try another one. Oops. Okay, tell whether the 2 figures are similar, explain your reasoning. So let's check the angle measures first. So do we have the same markings on each of them? Yes, 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 yes. And 3 up here and 3 up there. So all of the angles are equal. So this is a yes. Those are all equal. So now we're going to go ahead and check to see if the sides are proportional. Now here, you don't have to check all 3. You can pick 2 sides from one triangle, and then you have to use the same 2 sides on the other triangle. So maybe I'm going to choose to use these 2, 6 and 4. So I'm going to set it up as 6/4. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do the same concept. We have to use the same sides on the other triangle and match sides, match similar sides. So wherever I had 6, I have to put the 9. So 9/6. Now I'm going to check cross products. 6 times 6 is 36. 4 times 9 is 36. Are those equal to each other? Yes. So because I answered yes to both of these questions, then yes, these would be similar. Why? They have equal angles. They also have proportional sides. So they must meet both of those. We must have yeses to both of those questions. Okay. So let's try. Is that the one I just did? No, I accidentally pulled the wrong one back out. Oops. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this one. It says which rectangle is similar to A. So we've already done this one, right? We already did that as our very first one, checking to see which one was similar to A. So I'm going to extend on this. It says rectangle D. So I'm going to draw another rectangle. So rectangle D has 3 units long and 1 unit wide. So it looks something like this. 3 by 1. Okay, and this is going to be our rectangle D. It says which rectangle is similar to rectangle D. So now you are checking these other 3 to see if they're similar. Now keep in mind, I just roughly sketched this. This is a rectangle, which means all of these are 90-degree angles, even though it doesn't look like it. Okay, so we know that all of the angle measures are the same, even though my picture isn't perfect. So now what you guys are going to do is you're going to go ahead and pause your video, and you're going to go through and check to see which one of those other 3, A, B, or C, would have proportional side lengths. So you're going to check the proportions to make sure that the side lengths are equal, because we already know all of the angle measures are equal. So go ahead, pause your video now, and check to see which of those have a proportional side lengths to D. Okay, so when I checked my proportions, letter B was the one that had proportional side lengths because they both had the cross products of 6, or both of them reduced down to 1/3, or both of them had 0.3 if you choose to do them as decimals. Okay, so that's basically it out of this lesson, is working through finding out if you've got figures that are similar. So the key thing to remember out of this lesson is if you have figures that are similar, their angle measures will be equal to each other, equivalent to each other, and their side lengths will be proportional to one another, and they must meet both of those qualifications in order for them to be similar. The other key thing covered in this lesson was corresponding angles. Those are angles that are in the same spot of the figure, and corresponding sides, so sides that are in the same position on each figure.